Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the pod. It's been a super hot minute. I don't think I've made a podcast episode in multiple years. Today, uh, my friend Blair Collins is with us. Hey, Blair.
Hey, how's it going?
So good. Blair reached out to me, guys, because she wanted to have a practice round of a podcast. She's about to go on podcast tour. She's kind of a badass, and it inspired us to make this podcast together. Blair is one of the most interesting people I have ever met in my life. I am honored to call her a dear friend. We just got back from a vacation in Rome together a few months ago. That was really magical and like great, and talked about so many things that would get us canceled for life if they were ever recorded and publicly made available to the public. So I'm so excited to introduce everyone. And on that note, Blair, I would love to hear a little bit about you. Introduce yourself to the people.
Sure. We were just talking about it right before we jumped on. So, since I am going to practice my, I guess, intro, I haven't really decided what I'm going to lean on. I feel like so many people are so many things, right? So, I think the biggest thing about my life over the course of the last 20 years is just me being an entrepreneur. So I started my first real business when I was 15. I was cleaning houses in Naples, Florida. So I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Naples. It's like where people retire. And then when I was 19, I started my first tech company. That didn't go so well. So then when I was 23, I used the money from that and also the skill from that to start a real estate holding company shortly after the real estate and the stock market crash of 2005/2006 for the real estate, and then 2008 was in the stock market crash. And then after that, I sold that company and then parlayed it into franchising. So now I own franchise and then funding a tech company at the moment. So it's been fun. It's
Amazing. And there's
mostly
certainly, I'm sorry.
I said mostly entrepreneur stuff because the wife and mom stuff is pretty boring. So there's that.
Well, you have been twice married,
Yeah.
right?
Divorced twice, married once.
Okay. Got it. Okay, okay. Yeah, so
Long
very
story.
long story. I'm like the math, like carry the one. I don't know how that works. But okay. So yeah, quite the
No logic.
colorful path. Starting your own business at 15 is definitely not a common experience. And I feel like, the entrepreneurial mind and like trajectory, you can speak to your business accolades, but in order to be successful, you really need to have the mindset to do that. And that mindset permeates into every area of your life. So I feel like you've also gained so much success in like business, but it's also impacted like just how you live your life. I think that's why you and I connect so much, and the transformations that you have like undergone personally, So I don't know if you could speak a little bit to that also.
Yeah. So I guess now I'm starting to become a little bit more open about it. So I'm a huge proponent and advocate for taking 100% responsibility. Maybe, and my coach, I used to use the word fault, like everything is my fault. It's always my fault. If somebody slams into me, it's my fault. That's definitely changed and transformed throughout the years. So now I talk about personal responsibility, where if someone were to steal from me, or I don't know, break up with me, or they hate me for some sort of reason and it caused harm to my life or anything negative, I now know how to really understand how to evaluate it and then take personal responsibility for what I can. And then from that position, then change as quickly as possible. And I would say that most people now, when they meet me, they'll mention a few things that I'm successful and that I have these businesses, and then they list my accolades. But the biggest thing is the personal transformation or the mindset. I believe you can think your way into anything and think your way out of everything, which means that your mindset not yours, but I don't personally like to give advice, just another viewpoint. With my mindset, it was when I was young, I thought in an immature way. And as I got older, I started to develop things that I can tell myself how to get out of certain things or how to problem solve. Like I personally talk about problem solving quite often. And then I talk about pain, and forging is the other part. There was a huge this big, gosh, who was it? I know it's like a Russian proverb. And I think about this almost every day. It's the hammer that shatters glass forges steel. So anything that's painful in your life either shatters you or forges you. Anything that is happy, gives you happiness or creates happiness, either shatters you or forges you into steel. Anything that you do that brings personal gain either can shatter you or forges you. Anything that somebody does to betray you either shatters you or forges you. So, my whole idea of developing a mindset that's really, really powerful for me is always asking what forges me versus what shatters me. So I personally, for my life, believe that my greatest honor in my life is to be the strongest person I can be. That doesn't mean that I can't be feminine, because what people hear is this literal butch person who's like really masculine, who hates men and is a boss babe bitch or whatever the new terms are this year. Um, However, it's surely not that. Being strong has nothing to do with what's without. It's normally what's within. And the things that happen within then will translate to everything you see. I don't know how spiritual people want to get, but it's like, people talk about the 5D and then we're in the 3D. It's like everything first happens inside or spiritually, whatever you want to call your internal world, and then it gets exposed externally. So that's going back to then I take that part and turning it into, okay, if everything out here is a result of what's internal, then how can I take responsibility? Then everything that happens out here by 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 nature of logic is my responsibility. So if somebody slams into my car, how can I take responsibility for that? Well, what did I do to get to the point where someone's slamming into my car? And then if they do, now I can either get upset, get mad, feel sad that I have to pay for it. Now I need to get a new car and I become shattered by it. Or I figure out how can I just hurry up and problem solve this and use this as now a lesson to not do XYZ ever again. I'm using a really basic analogy, but you can take that and then spread it across different parts of your life, like friendships. And you and I have been talking a lot about friendships, romantic relationships, interpersonal relationships with your father and mother and brothers and siblings and other immediate family, and your work and coworkers. So I think it's having this type of mindset really helps me navigate through life in a way that either makes me a victim getting shattered or forge, which gives me power. So
Mic drop. Mic drop. First 5 minutes. Love it so much. Yeah, I would love to like unpack some of this. I think, I mean, you said a lot of really uh powerful concepts separately from each other, but they are all like so beautifully intertwined. Like I also believe it's an internal universe actually. So like you said, if something that's happening in your outside reality, it's mirroring back to you something that needs to be reworked internally inside of yourself, which can be quite controversial. This is actually a very Jungian concept, right? Carl Jung
yeah,
said that like even in the most vile, which by the way, this is not me victim blaming anyone. It's awful. Like assaults are awful. No one's saying you need an assault to integrate. No one's saying that. But as an example, in Jungian psychology, let's say a woman gets assaulted sexually, not a unique experience, right? In a Jungian framework, maybe that woman needed this like interruption or this like stark experience to integrate her sexuality. Maybe she was very dissociated from her sexuality, and there's no possible way of her like integrating it other than this action. It's like she needed some catalyst, and so this was again not victim blaming. It's like a really extreme example. It's the example that Carl Jung, is either him or an essayist, like a Jungian psychoanalyst, wrote an essay about this. But like, as that's one example. Okay, it's really easy to be really easy in that situation to like say I'm a victim, and I can say that something similar happened to me. And instead of going into my victimhood, I'm like, well, what is that showing me about how I need to grow and the things that I need to change? And it turned out I needed to change a lot about how I was vetting men, the
Yeah.
situations I was putting myself in. And it took me on a huge journey of like self-development, whatever. So that's like one example. And I think that you using that framework in combination with like an empowered mindset and forging versus shattering, like it's just that how you can't not be successful when you think like that, when you take part like and also I love this like radical accountability, radical responsibility. It's like you can take 100% responsibility, but the other person also has 100% responsibility. It's like in the case of assault, or for
Right.
example, I was 100% responsible for choosing that guy, doing like fulfilling everything on my end. He was also 100% responsible. It's a horrible thing to do to someone.
100%.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a huge difference between victim blaming, which I think is an absolute cop out to use words like that, like victim blaming,
Mhm.
versus realizing on a spiritual level, right? Because I think at this point, I'm just a lot more open with my spirituality than, but spirituality, I believe, should be, for me, is normally grounded in reason and logic. So, of course, you don't want to blame somebody for, there's a difference between taking responsibility for what you choose to do next and then taking responsibility for that person who chose to assault you. I mean, that person probably shouldn't have done that, more than likely shouldn't have done that. Okay, so now once he has done that, what's next, right? And then the other thing too is, instead of just talking about victim blaming, it's not that at all. There are things that happen in people's lives and they become catalysts to something so much more wonderful, that without this issue, or without this event, they will never be able to be the person that they were meant to be. Again, I'm not saying somebody who's out there, raping and forging like individuals should go out there and they're like, I am doing
God's
humane.
work. It's God's work.
Just gonna beat this bitch, I'm not saying that, team. Uh, what we are saying is the responsibility part comes in what happens next.
Mm,
So I had some things that happen. I don't know how much you know about the hero's journey or Joseph Campbell. So he talks about, the call, and then the denial of the call, right?
mm,
So it's like part of the hero's journey is, God is calling you to take this amazing journey, and it really doesn't have to be difficult, but he's asking you to take the journey, right? And then you deny it. And then it goes around to an event that happens, and then you get called in. You have a mentor that's kind of telling you what to do and to teach you how to go into where you face the abyss, which is facing the deepest, darkest part of you, or part of the situation. And then you go into the cave, right? And in that cave, you slay a dragon. And once you slay the dragon, you then take pieces of what you know, and then you have the return, and you become the hero at the end of it. I mean, the bad news is that you have to slay a dragon. The good news is that you get to be a hero at the end of it. And fun fact, that dragon that you slay is you the entire time. So you end up having to kill a part of who you are so that you can become something else and someone else, to become the hero of your own life. So there has to be some sort of in a lot of like spiritual communities, they call it the bridge of incidents or
Mhm.
the catalyst. We know it as a catalyst, and it causes this one chemical to then change and become something else. So then it can become something else altogether to then provide an entire different experience or different, it turns into a different chemical so that it can do something else versus what it was meant to do originally. So there's like these catalysts that you have to, that ends up happening in your life so that you can become someone else, something else, the hero's journey. It's quite fascinating once you take a step back and you can intelligently set your emotions aside and start to look at all the good things in your life, what bad or what evil has come from it, what and all the evil bad things in your life, what good has come from it. So I think it's a really interesting way of looking at things, but when you look at some of the greatest heroes of DC and Marvel comics, I personally like DC better. You'll start to see the genesis of of what they started off and what they become, and it was always some catalyst moment. And I believe they call it in DC, they call it a crucible moment.
Mhm.
It's the same thing. So you see it in every story, every triumphant, heroic story written in American, you know, in American history and also an American screenwriting or screenplay. I don't know what it's called when it's a
Mhm.
movie.
I think
Movies.
it's screenwriting. I don't know. This is so, I love this conversation because, I've done actually in the past month, I have been reflecting on like my former life. I literally used to live a completely different life. People who have been following me for a while kind of know. I was like in New York, very liberal in like the psychiatry, mental health industrial complex, like super victim-y, vegetarian, like weak, physically, like it was literally a completely different life. And now I'm back in Oklahoma with a really healthy like friendship. I've been talking with you, very healthy friendships now. Like, and it's having me contrast like my old life and my old friends so much because it's so in my face. Like people who are validating like how I'm thinking in my new life, right? All to say, like, the like there, I think it's a fissure of mentality. There's this like victim mindset of like mentally ill trauma, my trauma, this and my trauma, that, and like all of this like dwelling. I used to dwell on my past so fucking much, like with my parents and my upbringing and the dysfunction and all this stuff. Like, had my own crucible catalyst, and now my mentality is completely different. I'm so over it, and I'm honestly so grateful. I'm so grateful. Like for the first time like in my life, I'm grateful for that tribulation. Whereas when it was happening, it was such a big deal, and I was feeling sorry for myself and all this stuff. And it's like, what would the world be, if our like institutions who are supposed to care for like sick, they're just making sick people. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just factory making, like with a very toxic, in my opinion, mentality, people who are just like wallowing in their own shit. It's like the broken side of things, right? So I don't know. I'm just the way that you're speaking it, it's just reminding me so much of this like trauma informed this conversation about trauma online, trauma this and trauma that. And what if actually trauma is like crucible moments and it's actually crucial to the human experience to go through them to become like the superhero at the end? You know what I mean? Like what a reframe. Like how would that shift like half the fucking population? You know what I'm saying? You're muted, Blair.
Sorry, there was something outside.
That's okay.
I couldn't agree with you more. And so let's discuss that. Let's just
Yeah.
take 1 second and discuss that
Yeah.
part. You were talking about how in social media, assuming that's what it is, therapy, all of that, they're constantly digging in the past, consistently digging in the past, talking about trauma. So that comes from what psychiatrists. It's Carl Jung, and Sigmund Freud.
Freud, yeah.
So
Yes,
you have,
envy Freud.
yeah, mostly Freud, right? It's
Yeah.
like, it talks about the id, the
Yeah.
superego, and the ego.
Mhm.
And then he did free association, talked a lot about Oedipus, and a lot of it was trauma work looking back.
Mhm.
And there was actually, and then Carl Jung talks about the shadow work, doing some of the work within, and then dealing with the trauma and all of those trauma and doing shadow work so that you can, I forgot what the word that he uses.
Integrate.
Yeah, so you can integrate the darkness and the light,
Mhm.
but and again, talking a bit more about your childhood and
Mhm.
what was. But when you think about a lot of these things, when you focus on what was, all the regrets,
Mhm.
you don't get to focus on the present, which is the now, or some of the anxiety, which is in the future. So there was actually a third, the three, I call it the Three Musketeers. There
Yeah,
was
Albert, whatever. What's his name? Alfred?
Alfred
Alfred. Yeah.
Alfred Alder. He's not monetizable. His way of doing therapy, I personally don't believe is monetizable, because he talks about striving for superiority, right? I
Mhm.
mean, that that sounds a hell of a lot like elitist, right? But striving for superiority, the way that he described it, even though it's misinterpreted as classist and elitist, it's about self-improvement and mastery. We
Mhm.
don't hear that in therapy. Or it's about core of the human drive. At the core of human drive isn't pleasure, it's self-improvement and self-mastery. Compensation, right? Where he discusses, how do you develop your skills and strengths to counteract feelings of weakness and weaknesses of inadequacy. He used a lot of action-based psychology and therapy, and that also integrates in, have you read, not integrates, but Ayn Rand?
Yeah, a
Uh,
little bit. Not fully, not probably nearly
so-
as much as you, but yes. She,
yeah,
she she's banned. That's how you know if it's just onto something. She's like banned. Her books are banned, I think, in like several colleges.
amazing.
Yeah.
She's
She was the
amazing.
original anarchist. That's how I know her in my anarchy rabbit holes.
She was the original
Yes.
Anne.
Yeah.
But when you listen to the things she's saying, she's not telling people that you're unworthy. She's saying, if you feel weakness, if you feel inadequate, if you feel undeserving, unworthy, then the conclusion is that what you believe you are. So go find ways that you can not feel weakness, not feel inadequate, and figure out how you can then become deserving and then go off and deserve that thing. Right. So Alfred Alder talked about lifestyle change. Like each person creates a unique belief, habits, goals. By the age of 5, that starts to shape your trajectory. It starts at a really young age. And then he talked a lot about the mind, the body, and the environment as a unified, and it's not in part, but it all operates in unification and not in isolation. And then he talks about, he was huge on the goal oriented behavior. So think about all of those things. Now, when you think about the most successful people in the world, who possesses these traits? Entrepreneurs.
You have to, because otherwise you're not making any goddamn money. You're not
Yeah,
surviving. Our entrepreneurship is sink or swim. You're not getting a
exactly.
paycheck for being subpar because they need to fill like a role, you
Or,
know.
or you're a victim to your own trauma, your own circumstance. You're going to work on, you're more worried about sexual selection than you are on behaviors that are purposeful, direct, and towards achieving your personal goal. You don't even know how to place your personal goals. You don't even know how to write it down. But who are the people who are doing this? And I'm not saying this because I'm some sort of entrepreneur. I believe that when you possess these types of mindset and skill and start to holistically look at your life to see what's ahead and not what's behind, you become better. And in turn, you solve not only your own problem first, but other people's problems second. And then you're able to monetize it. And Alfred Alder, I have such a hard time saying both of his names. Um, he did such a fantastic job with helping people and giving the framework in order to be the best entrepreneur you can or the best person. You don't have to do this and then go out and start a business. I'm just using that as a really huge subset of people, as knowing that those people are out there solving the world's problems. They're making money and they're employing other people. So not only did they raise themselves up, now they're helping other people to find their way in life and in society. They're bringing value. They're not in the negative or neutral. They're really bringing more value. Then they're giving that information as a mentor or as a friend, and giving the information either for free or an environment where people are paying next to nothing. You pay next to nothing for information nowadays on YouTube. And things that people used to have to travel, take seminars in, you can get at the palm of your hands. I mean, it's unbelievable. The whole framework that Alfred Alder gave is so unbelievably, um, I'm so great for it. It's magnificent. Again, I'm not saying that there's not a place for Freud. Sigmund Freud's going through your trauma. I'm saying at some point there has to be some morsel of responsibility for what your life looks like in spite of those things. You're either shattered or you're forged. So it's either I did it to spite you. I am this way because I spite my past and all the people that have done all these things to me, or I have become successful, whatever that success may look to you, in spite of all these people in my past. I think it's a huge shift in mindset when you talk about the difference,
Oh, it's
spite
massive. It's
way.
literally everything. And just this conversation, oh my gosh. When I came out of like liberalism and fucking big pharma and veganism, like when I came out, I started seeing how the world was constructed to foster weak people because weak people are way easier to control than strong people. And I saw that mindset permeating from like how elementary school is. Like literally the same architects design elementary schools as design like prisons and like institutions to control people. You have to raise your hand, ask permission, like forego all of your own needs. It actually breeds slaves. Okay, public education is like a slave breeding ground, but so many things are like even our medical system. It's like a sick care system. Like there's so much. I just never saw how even like on a mental health on the mental health side of things, I saw how like meds did that, right? They placate you, the same ingredients and like Prozac were used to like placate whatever. The rabbit hole goes really deep, but it basically makes you more docile and more agreeable. It's mind control, like chemicals. So I saw it on that side, but even on like the actual therapy side, like now that we're contrasting like Freud, Jung, and
Yeah.
Albert, whatever, it's like it goes deep there too. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
recently heard about Albert Alfred in my entrepreneurial rabbit holes. I didn't hear about anything. And it makes so much sense because when I was like the most depressed in my life, I was like being fully supported by my family, like not doing anything with my life. Of course, I had low self-esteem because I didn't have any goal, like wasn't reaching any goals. I had this money, but it wasn't mine. It was just like, obviously you're not going to like develop healthy esteem because you're not fucking doing anything. But then I'm in therapy and they're like, oh, it's because your mom was mean to you and your dad is this way and whatever. And it's just like, yeah, but like also there's a whole other side. Like there are very successful people whose parents were fucking nightmares. Like, you know what I'm saying? Or happy people and functional people. It's not like the end of my rope because of this bullshit that honestly objectively, like I was dealt a lot of really positive hands that a lot of other people weren't fucking dealt, but I didn't have that perspective. So all to say, it's just wild how deep it goes. Like it's like
Right.
it feels like in like on a DNA level, like like everywhere you turn, it's just like slave programming. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. I mean, Aristotle talks about it.
Oh,
It's
yeah, let's
the
get into
whole,
Aristotle, baby.
Oh, I know. My guy. I'd marry him. I'm kidding. No,
No,
I
it's true. You actually introduced me to one of my favorite concepts that I've wanted to talk about for a really long time. So I'm glad that it could be my big coming out because I've been thinking about this since our initial conversation, I believe last November or December. Aristotle's theory of natural slaves and natural masters, and how people are born with natural proclivities towards one or the other. And when you're in entrepreneurial spaces, you see that entrepreneurs are just built different. They can't follow shit. And so like while the masses, like a lot of this programming that we're talking about, like in therapy and the education system and all of this stuff, it's built for the masses, built for people who can be controlled and don't really question it, whatever. We have this other subset of people who do question it and who do construct their lives in a way just to get out of that fucking system. So I'll shut up. I think Blair, you have probably a lot more to say about it, but you
you
introduced
know,
me to that concept. It's one of my favorite things.
it's been a great concept for me to understand too, because I had such a difficult time with a lot of, I've employed a lot of people. I've employed just throughout my career, I think right under 1,500 people, not all at once, but throughout the different businesses. Sometimes I would have 200 employees, sometimes I would have 75. Right now I have the smallest staff I've had in a really long time, and it's a staff of 25. So I'm around a lot of people, and I can see people's proclivities quite easily and quite well. So let's go into what Aristotle's talking about before people start thinking that we're talking about indentured servitude. So
Yeah, let's clear it up before we're
clear
yeah,
it up.
hashtag
So
cancel.
there's this concept by Aristotle, and he talks about natural, and we're talking about personality traits. We are not speaking of somebody gets chained up, bought and sold. This is not how we're going to use this word. So let's start there. Secondly, masters, again, using the word not as a master over slaves and where they bought and sold actual people. This is a proclivity towards a very specific type of personality and archetype. So he's describing archetypes. So when in this particular scenario, and I believe it's in some of his work called Rhetoric. I could be wrong here. I'm so sorry. I've read so many of Aristotle's pieces at this point that it's all jumbled up. So natural slaves, they're considered um they lack full faculty for reasoning. So what that really truly means is that they lack the understanding uh, to direct people, and they lack their full faculty to reason, to then govern themselves and other people. So then it's almost like the soul rules the body and the mind, or the mind guides passion. Aristotle believed that rulers should govern those who are less rational. He believed that if you are someone who could be a leader, the virtuous thing to do is guide the people who lack full faculty for reasoning into the thing that fulfills their purpose. So, for example, I'm going to get extreme and then I'm going to pull it back into a bit more of a reasonable, just so you can see the differentiation. If you have a mentally handicapped or a Down syndrome child and you're the parent, and that child becomes 13 years old, most 13-year-old children can be at home by themselves, can go walk over across the street and play with their neighbors or their children, and they're fine, right? That we can all agree to that. However, when you have somebody that has Down syndrome, there has to be almost like guiding posts for them, right? Where you do have to guide them in different directions because of their mental state. So, in order for you to be a good parent, or we'll use the word instead of good, let's use the word virtuous to fit into Aristotle's definition. In order for you to be a virtuous parent, what are you going to do with that child with Down syndrome? You're going to guide that child, maybe walk that child over explain certain concepts, let the child know that you can't scream or you can't yell or you can't sit there or you can't behave that way. Do this, right? That is a virtuous person. When you are a virtuous parents, when you put them in the context of a Down syndrome person. Now, take it back. Now, let's go a little bit bigger, set that aside. Now you have these 18-year-olds, these 16-year-old, these 21-year-old people with average IQs that they might have the capacity to do work, really good work. However, they don't have the capacity to figure it out on their own, how to do that thing in the most efficient way in order to make this organization work. So then you have to have leaders, masters, right? We'll call them leaders slash masters come in who not only have full faculty over reason, they have full faculty over reason in the highest level. And so not only do they know how to give themselves direction, they also know how to give other people direction in a way that they can understand and in a way that can make them understand what they're saying and how to do that task efficiently and effectively. And when that person who lacks full faculty for reasoning then does that thing, does that job, they now become virtuous because they are good at that job or that thing. They're being told what to do. So the whole idea of natural masters or masters are to push those that lack natural slaves into a more virtuous life. It is now the master's job. And in order for the master to now be virtuous, they must then have to essentially master over slaves, right? The natural slaves. Again, not slavery. We're talking about natural slaves as an archetype and natural masters as an archetype. Hoping I explained that properly.
Oh
It's
no.
a really,
I
really complicated concept.
no, I think personally you did a good job. I don't know about the rest of our listeners, but I think that you did a really good job of just differentiating exactly what he meant. And I think like that honestly is kind of what got me. I used to be like kind of in this anarchy rabbit hole, as I mentioned, like with Ayn Rand and whatever, and kind of used to think that like, which I still do. The government is very corrupt, okay? Like, I don't think that they have our best interests at heart necessarily. I don't think that you should trust them. But I used to think that like the government as a whole and as an entity was like went against natural order and that like you can't have control or dominion over anyone else but yourself. So don't fucking tell me what to fucking do. Like, you know what I'm saying? That being said, um, just having lived my life and discerned and also, running my own business, I have not employed as many people as you, but I've had assistants and like there is a difference in capacity, maybe. I don't know how to say this, but there's just like there's a difference in mentality, or I think you said it in reasoning, whatever. Like
Yeah.
I just wouldn't have faith that some people could rule over themselves safely and efficiently and effectively. And like strong leadership is a gift, honestly. There's been some really incredible leaders that we've had as a country and just in certain businesses. Like, I don't know. I know everyone loves you in your businesses. Like, I feel like good leadership is a super positive and uplifts everyone else, and that's what it should be. And some people do genuinely need that, and some people were genuinely built for that. Like I've also learned about a lot about myself. Like I'm pretty bossy, pretty controlling. Like I'm a nightmare employee. Like, I'm great in like leadership roles and things that need high level like direction and dominion. Like that's a good place for me. So
Oh,
um,
for sure. I
learning
mean,
about this concept though, that there's just natural places for people and it's like cool and everyone gets their needs met was like brought me peace because it's not this like equality messaging that we get all the time. Like everyone's equal, treat everyone equally, equal this, equal. It's like you're I'm sorry, Blair, the way you think is not the same that the vast majority of people. I don't think I am normal. Like, I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, not necessarily better or worse, not better or worse, but just like people are different and people have different mentalities and like it's not that simple, you know?
Well, the whole idea is finding what your purpose is through first discovering who you are, not what you can do for the world yet, but discovering who you are. I think there's a huge differentiation between knowing who you are
Mhm.
versus knowing what you can offer the world, right? I
Mhm.
mean, people talk, they're like, oh, well, who are you? Oh, I'm a good father. Great. I'm a good mother. Great. But that's what you do for the world because
Mhm.
those are the things that are for what's without. But what about within, right? So the more that you start to understand what's within, then you can discover your purpose, your maybe your purpose for now, but at least you're discovering your purpose. And when you discover your purpose, you start to want to behave towards virtuous action. So if you're
Mhm.
a good leader, then everything you do, if you want to continue to pursue your highest purpose, is to go towards your virtuous action of being a leader. So if you're a leader and you know that, you go find ways in order for you to be a leader. That doesn't necessarily mean you go and create businesses. I'm not saying that. It's just find a way in which your highest purpose can then become a virtuous action. Now, if you are on the flip side of things, and you know this about yourself, not we're all not made to be leaders. Most of us, I would call it an 80-10 rule, the Pareto principle. I would probably call it less than that. I'm just being kind right now. But let's say 80% of society are going to be natural master or natural slaves. Then what is your virtuous action? Your virtuous action is to find the leader that fits your style so that they can push you towards the most virtuous action so that you could be the best at your job. And you could be whatever. It might be the best parent, it might be, the best whittler. I don't know. Whatever that virtuous thing you're doing, because we've all worked with that asshole where it's just like they just sit there and like, I mean, it's like, yeah, and they're high and they're drunk, and you're over here just like putting 30 times the amount of effort into this, right? And so this person I would consider not a virtuous one. Just because you are a natural slave doesn't mean you cannot live a virtuous life. That's not what the whole point was. The whole point is knowing what your archetype is. I'm a leader in a lot of things, a lot of things. Where I'm not a leader in is probably my household. I'm just like not the best at it. So again, it's not a binary thing. You might not be a leader at your work, but you might be an incredible leader at home, an incredible father or figurehead. Awesome. Leader at home, slave at work. I am definitely, when I tell you, a leader, a master, maybe a super master if there was one at work. It's just how I am. I'm built that way. I'm built to solve problems, first my own, then others. But when I'm at home, I'm a little lost. Like, well, I don't know where we're going to go on vacation. I mean, if you want to move there, no problem. I'll solve the problem along the way. I'm just a great helper at home. I'm a fantastic helper in every way. You're hungry? No problem. You tell me when you're hungry, I'll cook. You tell me what food you want to eat, it's there. You want to go to a movie? I'll book the tickets. You like that restaurant? I'll find us the best seats. But I don't like choosing. So there has, it's not a binary life. It's not do or don't. It's not all or nothing. I do understand that the whole idea is how you do anything is how you do everything. However, what in better context is how you do anything is how you do everything is more along the lines of if you're going to work your ass off at work, more than likely you're not going to be a POS at home, right? It's more like the energy, not necessarily. If I'm a master at work, I'm a master at home. I'm a master here and a master there. It's like, no, but the energy that I have in each of these areas are going to be consistent. So that's my view on how you do it. How you do anything is how you do everything, and not being so binary when it comes to slavery versus
Mhm.
if you're in one archetype and not the other.
Mhm. I love that. Yeah. Especially as women and like women in business or whatever the trendy fucking thing is now. Like there's so much dialogue about how do you do it all and how do you have like, but there is a conversation to be had in the context of a woman like you who is exceptionally successful in your business life, and you have to be a killer when it comes to like that whole world. But then also code switching. This is like what I work a lot with, my more high earning, high performing women a lot. It's like which you're quite unique in that you really do have this like wifely like background as well. Like you just have a background in both. But a lot of the women that I work with don't, and they have all career, all of the kind of killer mentality, whatever, and they have a deficit of the feminine energy stuff. But it really is a conversation to be had about like, okay, with this natural slaves versus natural masters, is that I would even argue though, Blair, to be honest, in the conversations that I've had with you about relationships and like wifey shit, you are a feminine master in your home life. Like, yes, like on the surface, it's very you're the support and you're the feminine, right? And you're not like some boss bitch ordering your man around or anything like that. But you understand like you're the neck that supports the head. And it's like leadership. I wouldn't even use the word leadership, but it's like you don't forego your power. You just
No,
exercise it in a very soft and feminine way that
no.
still kind of like works. So
Let me be freaking clear.
take a
Let's be
step back here.
here. Let's take a step back here. At no point in any part of my life, and this is how you do anything is how you do everything. I don't forego my power, but I have full total confidence that in any situation, because I'm so confident in my power, I don't need to inflict that on people or assess my power in every situation. I'm normally a pretty quiet person. Like in friends, we laugh and things like that. But if we're, I mean, I go out to dinner with my groups of friends all the time. And and if there was somebody new there, most of the people think I'm a little bit more introverted and quite polite, which I am because I have confidence in mine. I'm not a chihuahua. I was built like a lion. Well, I was forged into a lion. So I don't, like lions don't care for the opinions of lambs. Like I don't need to behave in any way for everybody to know how powerful I am because I have it. It's like if you're not thirsty, why speak of thirst? If you're not thirsty, why discuss water? You have it. Move on. Move on to something that you might need. Like move on to a necessity. Power is not a necessity for me when it comes to
It's
people.
also not loud. Like, I don't know. I feel like the most powerful person in the room is usually like the most kind of like like you wouldn't necessarily know because they don't feel the need to like prove it or whatever. Um, I want to actually go back. You were saying with Ayn Rand striving for superiority, I kind of wrote this down, this conversation about natural masters, natural slaves, personal power, all of this. I kind of have been on my own journey, and I kind of want to just like hear your thoughts, like, or whatever insight that you have. I built this program. It's called Nice Girl Deprogramming. And in that program, it's really about like developing a healthy ego, developing personal power, acknowledging the areas that you sit higher on the social hierarchy than others, like very naturally, so that you can clock when people are being weird towards you because of it. Because even if you don't see the world that way, other people do. So it's kind of this like, it's kind of a taboo, right? Because, we have this messaging of like, trauma and everyone's equal and all this stuff. But like I have personally found a lot of healing in developing my mind like a killer, like not like actual murderous killer, but like really cutthroat, higher ego, not like super inflated or whatever, but just like a strength, an inner strength, and seeing the world as it is and like moving accordingly and having this like power mindset. And I feel like a lot of people move through the world because we're kind of have this veil of like slave programming, as I mentioned. Everyone's kind of in it until you wake up from it. And if you really are a master, then you start building yourself and you start shifting these shattered experiences into things that forge you and whatever. It's just like this coming of age story, hero's journey, if you will, of like a master or a powerful person that finds their power eventually. I don't know
Right.
if you have anything to speak to that. I feel like you started the game really young with your first business at 15, so maybe you were kind of always on this, but just like talking a little bit about coming into yourself as like the powerful woman that you are. Like, have you always been like that? Have you found a similar journey?
Okay, so let's start off by the reason why I had to start a business so young is because I was surviving. I was an orphan. So it wasn't like I had two sweet parents and then I'm like, "Hey mom, I'm going to clean some houses." It was I'm hungry. I got to figure this out and I will do what it takes no matter what it is. And I just, you know, when you're that young and I had my father until I was about 13 years old. And so my father knew he was going to die when I was about maybe 8 or 9 years old. So about 4 or 5 years of my life, he was no longer my father. He was just my teacher. So I loved him as my father. I respect him as my teacher. And he was like, when you die, or when I die, you will be alone. And I'm going to give you all the skills you need in order to survive and be an apex and basically be a winner in life. No one is going to come from for you. You will be alone. You will have to save yourself and you will have to be your own hero. And he was right. No one came for me. No one helped. I mean, you have help here and there, of course. People are very kind and generous, but in general, I parented myself. I figured out a way to make money. I figured out where to live. And I was just alone for a huge majority of my childhood because I couldn't be with other 15-year-olds because they had the luxury of going home to someone they could rely on. I had to figure out how to make enough money to make sure I can live in the place that I was living when the rent was due next week or next month, not next week. So when he taught me all of these things, the first thing that my father taught me, you would think, oh, to fight and hunt and all that stuff, which he eventually did. Again, do not enjoy hunting. Just to clarify, I get it.
Hard
I've been
pass.
on many hunts. I don't enjoy it in any way. Not small, not large, but I can shoot some things with my bow. And so I think I just have a bit more, the more I became spiritual, the more I became sensitive to um my way on this earth, right? Like I just feel more, even though I don't go outside a whole lot, I feel gentle in connection to our earth. And so what he what he slowly taught me as a child is how to be a thinker. You would think, again, it was hunting, fighting, all the things which he did teach me at that age. The most important thing was my mind. It was, I would have to read philosophy. How do you think I learned Aristotle? I would have to read poetry, Emily Dickinson, Edgar Allan Poe, Kipling in the background. Um, and I read Henry David Thoreau, understood transcendentalism, and he would come home in his wheelchair and he would ask me how my day was, what did I learn? And I would have to repeat it back in multiple different languages. This wasn't a, he gave me my start to life, and the start was pretty gnarly. However, I was either going to get shattered or forged. And so I, at the age of 11 years old, made a decision that I would be one of the wealthiest people I'll ever meet. And I'm still on that trajectory. And I truly believe I will be. And so, I made it to the top income earners in the US. It's going to be the world soon. And I'm going to keep doing it because I believe that I set this goal and this purpose and this highest aim. Although now my true aim isn't financial anymore, but it's still being the wealthiest and the best because I need that in order to truly reach my highest aim. So I would say in my particular example is probably not going to be the best example. However, that doesn't mean that I just started where people would start in their 30s. Let's put it that way. So take the 11-year-old girl and add 20 years to it, and whoever's in their 30s should start this journey, or hopefully in their 20s. I would say most people will start in their 30s because in your 20s, you just don't have enough time to get betrayed. What's the worst that's going to happen? Your freaking girlfriend cheats on you? Get out of here. Like, move on. Right? I mean, I don't mean to trivialize it, but it's trivial. It's trivial. Once you get into your 30s and you start to feel the loss of your family, people dying in your life, people betraying you beyond comprehension, your best friend betraying you, sleeping with your husband leaving you with two kids or whatever it is, you taking all of your husband's money in a divorce because you decided that you want a younger man or a different life. Like, I mean, come on. It gets real in your 30s. So you're going to go through the hero's journey in your 30s. And my hope is that you went in it in your 20s. I was lucky enough to do it in my teens. So most people would look at my life, and I allow people to feel what they feel. It's not my job to change people's emotions and their opinions about me. What people saw is a horrendous life. What I saw was the greatest gift God could have ever given me because I'm 20 years ahead of everybody. I just am. It's like I am emotionally, mentally, and financially 20 years ahead of most people in life, in the world, because I got the opportunity to face the love of my life dying at 13 years old, which was my father, because he's the only person who's ever loved me truly. I mean, eventually I end up loving other people, but you know, the soul connection was with him. And so yeah, that's kind of my opinion on that.
Want to drop mic drop for you. That was really profound. Yeah, I think about this a lot. Like I call it like front loading your karma, like I coach a lot of girls, and a lot of them have gone through some stuff, like especially when it comes to the stuff that you're talking about, family stuff, losing a parent, a dysfunctional household or something. It's like you front load all of it. You think, I mean, yes, I agree. You're lucky enough to like get started in your teens, and you're definitely well ahead of probably anyone I've ever spoken to be honest. But it is a gift. It's a huge gift because a lot of people, like you mentioned, yeah, it gets real in their 30s. They've ruined their whole lives by marrying the wrong person and having a baby on them. Like, and then that's now the rest of their life, like into their 50s or whatnot. So I think that that's profound. I also think it's really profound, like how your father basically trained you into becoming an apex. And we're kind of coming up here on time. I would love for you to leave us all. I mean, that last thing was a really profound note, but if you were to impart wisdom into the listeners about how to become an apex, whether it's action or mindset, what are like the top three things that you would impart on anyone listening?
Reading, 100% learning. Read as many books as you can fit in every single day. Every single day. Nothing will replace education. You get somebody will write a book and they've spent 20 years doing that. If I wrote a book today, I will have had 30 years, 30 years worth of fighting for my dreams since I was like 10 or 11 years old, right? I'm 39. I will have had nearly 30 years of fighting for my dreams and chasing my dreams. And if I wrote it in a book, that 30 years is in an 8-hour Audible. And you can find the right style, the right authors, but multiple different authors. I mean, I read all sorts of stuff from the left, stuff from the right, stuff from philosophy, obviously Sigmund Freud, all the way down to Alfred Alder, everything. Fit in as much information as you can for a year. Can't do it for 30 days. What a ridiculous thing to do. Do it for 12 months. And if you can do it for 12 months, you can do it for 12 more. If you can do it for 12 more, do it for 5 years and chase your dreams for 10 years. Give up after 10. Give up on your dreams after 10 years and find a new one. Or continue on. The reason why I tell people to give up on their dreams after 10 years is because if they're chasing their dreams, they become someone else and they become something else while they're chasing their dreams. And eventually they'll get it, or they'll know when to stop and when to keep going, no matter what anybody thinks. It's, but the challenge with most people is they can't even stay in the gym for 30 days. How the hell are you supposed to chase your dream for 10 years? And if you can chase your dreams for 10 straight years, you will have separated yourself from about 90% of the other people. And perhaps that dream might not work, but something else will. And maybe your only challenge there is to adjust. Again, this is probably not the easiest advice, but it's sound advice. So if you want an easy advice, I would suggest figuring out a way to control your emotions. For example, I find that I'm a very compassionate person. I know that. But all of my friends know that I talk about not wanting to be compassionate. And when they say, well, compassion, I'm like, I don't have compassion. It's not that I don't, I have a lot of it. It's that I know how to use different emotions at different times to be beneficial. And right now in my life, compassion is not beneficial. Living a binary, you must do this, you must do that, it will stifle every single part of your growth because life is not black and white and the spirit inside of your soul isn't black and white. And if you can just start to be open-minded about different things and allowing it to change your really hard chiseled out mindset a little bit and chip at it, then maybe along that path of reading books and controlling some of your emotions, you'll start to realize that everything in your life is actually not that big of a deal. And all of the heartache and heartbreak, betrayal, and all the things, if you can lessen the impact on your life, then you can then finally start to see what's important. And then you'll start moving towards virtuous action. The reason why people who are poor have such a hard time reading and learning and educating is because their bodies are beaten down from working all day. And then some of them drink alcohol and do drugs and they don't eat appropriately to then think clearly. So now their mind is inundated. And then they pick up their phone and use social media, watch TV rather than reading and writing and learning about who they are. Now their eyesight, and their ears are being inundated with other things. So now they have absolutely zero capacity to change the one thing that could change their life forever, which is their mind. I mean, it's so easy. It's so difficult, but the concept is quite easy. And there is no other advice I would give myself, my children, my family, anybody, other than if you can learn a thing, learn the thing. It really is that easy.
I love it. This was such a treat, Blair. Thank you so much for your wisdom and for just giving us a little insight into your life and into your mind. Let's use this opportunity if you want to plug anywhere that people can find you, either social media or your company website. Um, yeah,
Awesome.
I'd
I
love to
started a
know.
company because I don't really like drinking all that much. And, I haven't really drank in about 4 years. I mean, I do here and there, not really, but I started a non-alcoholic company. You still feel a little bit of the buzz. I used a bunch of plant medicine, I told you, over the last 4 years. I don't know if you've ever been sober as a whip and around drunk people. They're the worst. And my level of agitation and irritation, it's at like threat level, you know. So I created this cocktail for myself so that whenever I go out, I don't feel so irritated. I wanted to hang out with people. So I'd stick it in my purse. And turns out people really love it. And this was a perfect way to monetize it as well. So I'm solving a problem of people like me who they might not want to drink on a Wednesday, but they want to go hang out with their friends, or even at home. They don't want to have a glass of wine every night or beer. And so it's 0 calories, zero sugar, and it's perfect. It's called Zero Proof Shot. So you can find it on zeroproofshot.com. So if you don't want to drink, you want to feel the effects of alcohol, but don't want to have all the consequences. It's like a perfect drink to have.
Amazing. I'm so excited to try that myself. I relate so much. I stopped drinking too.
I'm gonna send
And
it to you. So
yeah, oh my gosh, I'll
good.
plug it so hard. Well, Blair, thank you so much again. This was honestly just a really a conversation that fed me, and I know it fed a lot of our listeners. So thanks everyone for being here, and we'll see you on the next one.